dump. Britons maddened as Boris' outdated Covid approach sent UK into chaos with record infections. Britons have criticised Boris Johnson for refusing to introduce further Covid restrictions before New Year's Eve. The government has announced that no new measures will be imposed over the coming week, asking only that people are cautious. This comes amid the emergence of the Omicron Covid variant, believed to spread faster but to be less harmful than previous strains. A record 113,628 Covid cases were reported in England on Christmas Day. Some have taken to social media to accuse the Prime Minister of acting irresponsibly by not taking Omicron more seriously. A decision not to introduce new restrictions was made earlier today, on Monday, after Mr. Johnson reviewed the latest Covid data with top government advisers. Following this, Health Secretary Sajid Javid said, "We look at the data on a daily basis. That hasn't changed over the Christmas period, but there will be no further measures before the new year. We won't be taking any further measures. Of course, people should remain cautious as we approach New Year celebrations and take a lateral flow test if that makes sense. Celebrate outdoors if you can, have some ventilation indoors if you can. Please remain cautious, and when we get into the new year, of course we will see then if we do need to take any further measures, but nothing more until then, at least." The decision clashes with those made by the UK's other nations. In Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, table service has been introduced in pubs and attendance numbers at both indoor and outdoor events has been limited. Many commenters on social media have drawn attention to recent Covid figures which they suggest increase the need for further restrictions. Mark wrote, 113,000 cases Christmas Day, 98,500 today, and now you're going to allow people to mix in large numbers on New Year's Eve and then go back to work and school next week. He asked Mr. Javid, "Seriously, what planet are you on?" Others have taken a far more positive view of the decisions. Daily Skeptic editor Toby Young said, "The lockdown skeptics are winning the argument. The longer Mr. Johnson delays making a decision, the harder it will be to recall Parliament before the year ends, and the less likely it is that any additional restrictions will be imposed." Boris Johnson will not introduce further Covid restrictions in England before 2022, giving mass events the go-ahead and leaving nightclubs open for New Year's Eve, in contrast with all other UK nations. Scientists criticised the decision, which came as England recorded its highest number of Covid infections. They said it was the moment of the greatest divergence between scientific advice and legislation seen since the start of the pandemic. The announcement came after advisers told Johnson that significant NHS pressures were coming from staff absences rather than overcrowded intensive care units. One model has predicted that in London, where Covid rates are highest, up to 40% of staff could be absent because of sickness. Ministers are expected to continue to focus efforts on vaccination, including the booster rollout. Sources say most of the cases behind the rise in hospital admissions are people who are unvaccinated. The decision not to introduce curbs makes England an outlier in the UK, after Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland put limits on social gatherings and mass events. Johnson's cabinet rejected new measures before Christmas, as cases of the Omicron variant started to rise. 3 cabinet ministers who spoke to The Guardian on Monday said they remained deeply sceptical that any further measures were necessary. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, said people should take steps themselves to protect others. "We won't be taking any further measures. Of course, people should remain cautious as we approach New Year celebrations and take a lateral flow test if that makes sense. Celebrate outdoors if you can, have some ventilation indoors if you can," he said. The call for caution was reiterated by the Prime Minister in a series of tweets on Monday night. "We will continue to monitor the data carefully, but there will be no new restrictions introduced in England before the new year," he said. However, "I would urge everyone to continue to act cautiously given the rising number of Omicron cases. Most importantly, I urge everyone to get their first, second or booster jab without delay to protect yourselves and your loved ones."